talking about shields all this weekend. A shield about me, finding my identity and my protection in Christ. Today, we're going to ask the question, what color is your shield? And hopefully by the end of this, it'll make sense. I want to tell you two stories. I love to tell stories. I could have been one of my three things, but again, I think it's kind of obvious. I love to tell stories. I want to tell you two stories. The first story is a very sad story. And the second story, well, you'll have to decide. Okay? Here's the first story. It is actually recorded for us in 1 Kings chapter 14. But we're going to come back to chapter 10 because it gives us some of the important details. The sad story is about a guy named Rehoboam. Rehoboam is the king, and his dad was a king. That means he inherited his kingdom. And under his dad, Solomon, things were pretty awesome. But now, under Rehoboam, things are really, really bad. And it gets even worse. So for sake of contrast, we're going to go back to 1 Kings chapter 10 and see how good things were under King Solomon. All right? 1 Kings chapter 10. And we're going to be looking at verses 14 through 17. Here's what we read about King Solomon. I mean, this guy is rolling in the dough. And it's the gold kind. Here's what we learn. Solomon earned for the nation 25 tons of gold every year. Every year. 25 tons of gold. And the next year, 25 tons of gold again. And in the third year, fourth year, fifth year, tons of gold. Not just an expression, the real deal. 25 measured out tons of gold every year. All right, so did a little bit of calculating. Get on the internet, and figure out today's gold prices. Are you ready? 25 tons of gold at today's gold prices. 1 year, $1.2 billion by today's gold prices. Not including all the money that came in every year from foreign trade. So all this money and 25 tons of gold every year. So Solomon is, he's sitting pretty in blank, right? He's got all that he wants or needs. Now, in verse 16, we read something interesting. One specific thing that Solomon had made out of the gold. He had some shields. We read that he had 200 large shields made out of 7.5 pounds of gold per shield. And then 300 small shields with 3 3/4 pounds of gold in them. Now, get the idea. A large shield. But first of all, what's the purpose of a shield? What is a shield? Let's like that an honest. Yeah, that's exactly right. To protect you from hand-to-hand combat, which would be a sword, or to protect you from incoming projectiles like arrows, lances, stuff that would be coming at a distance. It's interesting that we've already noted that, and we'll be seeing this tomorrow. The shield, it is like the earliest protection element imagery that God uses to communicate himself at any time. Just think about it. Pretty soon after Cain and Abel, the idea of having a shield to stop, something coming at you, pretty smart thinking, right? Shields have been around as long as, well, almost as long as the first weapon, because it's the first defense. So, how does a shield work? Yeah, you hold it. There's actually, it's called umbras, those the straps, leather straps, that you put your arm through. And the idea of having a shield was you would put it in between you and the person you're fighting with, right? So if you're right hand dominant, what are you holding in your right hand? The weapon, right. And so on your other arm would go the shield. Now, thinking in terms of practicality, you want your shield to be as big as possible, right? Because the bigger the shield, the more protection it gives you. But, there comes a point where it's too big, right? Because you can't run, you can't fight. So, all throughout history, there have been these unique dynamics of how big or how small. Ever hear the expression, like in regards to pirates, or they were swashbucklers? Ever hear that expression? You know what that's talking about? Shield. Yeah, the buckler was their shield. Swash was what you used the sword. So a swashbuckler and a buckler. It's actually, anybody wearing a belt right now? And your belt has a buckler. It's the same word. A buckler was a small shield that they would hang on their belt. So that was a really small shield. Now, what we read in the text here is that Solomon had how many large shields? How many? 200 large shields. Now, a large shield is probably going to go from shoulder to knee. And then how many small shields? 300. Small shield is going to be more like a buckler. The kind that you whip out, and it's really just for close-in defense. Now, here's what we read next with what Solomon does with these 500 shields made out of hammered gold. Where did he put them? You see there at the end of verse 17? Where did he put them? Where were they? Forest of Lebanon, you must have, New King James or NIV or something? Okay, all right. You put them in the palace, right? In the Forest of Lebanon. Is that translation? Anybody have a different translation? The house? House of the Forest of Lebanon. All right. Anybody have anything a little different? Okay, all right. Well, let me help you out here a little bit. There's two different ideas of which palace this is. The palace, if it was the palace up in the Forest of Lebanon, that would be the summer palace. Away from Jerusalem, up in the cool mountainy forests of Lebanon. Here's the problem. The problem is that at this particular time, Solomon and Rehoboam, who followed after him, did not actually own or control Lebanon. But it is interesting that throughout Israel's history, there actually were at different times 8 palaces that they owned in Lebanon. Here's the other translation. The palace of the cedars of Lebanon, or the palace of the trees from Lebanon. Now, when we go back one generation before Solomon, the king was David. And David built this massive palace in Jerusalem. And he negotiated with the king of Lebanon for cedar wood to be shipped down. And he built his palace out of cedar wood from the forests of Lebanon. So, our choices are, it's either the palace, the big palace, the main palace in Jerusalem, or it's the summer palace up in Lebanon. In either regard, this is where Solomon hangs the shields. 500 shields. And they line the walls of his palace. What do you think about that? Practical. Where do shields normally need to be? Exactly. They either need to be with the army or they need to be in the armory, which is where all the weaponry and stuff is held for the army. But Solomon just has it hanging on the wall in his palace. Okay, now, jump forward to the time of Rehoboam. Come on over to chapter 14. So, 500 shields made out of gold. Now, there's no way to actually estimate what the value of those shields are because there's an unknown factor here. That's the artistic value. But just looking at the gold price, because we can measure the gold, right? How much was in the large shields? How much gold in each one? 7 pounds. How much in the little ones? 3 3/4 pounds of gold in each shield. So we can do the math, calculate that out. The 200 large shields is 7 pounds each. 300 small shields of 3 3/4 pounds. So, using today's gold prices, fresh off the internet this morning, the value of 500 shields, $60 million. Just hanging on the wall. All right, now, fast forward to Rehoboam. Rehoboam is the king after Solomon, and things go south in a big hurry. Rehoboam is not a good leader. He's not a good king. He makes tons of mistakes. He alienates the people, and he tries to make himself look like a big king, and nobody takes him very, very seriously. In fact, here's what we read in 1 Kings chapter 14, beginning in verse 25. In the 5th year of King Rehoboam, so it's only taken 5 years for it to attain this bad. Shishak, king of Egypt, attacked Jerusalem. Stop right there. Interesting. Shishak is called what? The king of Egypt. Anybody find that weird? What's the king of Egypt usually called? Pharaoh. Yeah, one of the one places in all the Bible where he's not called Pharaoh, he's called king. I'll leave that for your own Bible study. Shishak, king of Egypt, comes knocking on Rehoboam's door. He decides he doesn't want to pay tribute anymore, as he had been for all these years when Solomon was king. And he decides he's going to help himself. Look at verse 26. He carried off the treasures of the temple of Yahweh and the treasures of the royal palace. He took everything, including all the gold shields that Solomon had made. Now, this is one more evidence in favor of that the palace was in Jerusalem, the main palace, because where does Shishak go? He goes to Jerusalem. Where does he get the shields? It seems to be Jerusalem. So he's taken $60 million of gold. 500 shields. They're gone. They're out. Now, Rehoboam, what do you think he's going to do? Without looking at the text, just tell me what you think he would do at this point. Try to get it back, go to war, get it back. That's one option. What do you think? What? Make more? Make more. But he can't afford it because he's not bringing in the revenue like his dad was. He's broke. So, what do you do when you shields are gone. Not going to be easy to go to war because war costs money. And you can't replace them with the gold because you don't have any gold. Let's look at the text and see what he does. Verse 27. So King Rehoboam made bronze shields to replace them and assigned these to the commanders of the guard on duty at the entrance to the royal palace. Whenever the king went to the Lord's temple, the guards bore the shields, and afterward they returned them to the guard room. So here's what Rehoboam does. He has 500 shields made out of bronze. And then he has that he's so afraid that his own soldiers are going to steal these that he makes sure that they get checked in and out every single time that they're needed. All right, so gave you the math on the gold shields. Now let's do the math on bronze. Bronze. What is bronze? Third metal. What is bronze? Yeah, it's not valuable. Not valuable. Not like gold. Gold is pure metal. Bronze is an alloy. It's a combination of two metals brought together. Does it kind of look like gold? Kind of, sort of. You know, in a bad light, maybe. Kind of looks like gold. But it isn't gold. Here's the difference in price. Bronze is worth about, by today's standards, $2 a pound. So if we do the math, the 500 shields had all the pounds of gold in them, went from $60 million in value to the bronze replacements. Ready? Drum roll. $5,000. 60 million. 5K. That was it. That was the difference between what Solomon had and now what Rehoboam has replaced. That's a pretty sad story. That's the sad story. What a loss. I'll tell you what. Here's the sad story of this whole story. Is that you and I, every single day, are tempted to do the exact same thing that we want. Only we don't do it with something as cheap and as easily replaced as gold. David, I want you to come with me, 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 7. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 7 says that you have something that is of far greater value than gold. What is it? Don't. Your faith. Your faith is of far greater value than gold. And we are all tempted to let someone come in and steal our faith away. Right now you might think, not me, never happened to me. Yeah, it does. Having your faith stolen can happen to you the same way, the exact same way that Rehoboam got his shields stolen. Let's make a couple of observations about these shields and how Rehoboam, how he might have viewed them. Okay, so were they really his shields? Do you think he thought of them as his shields? I mean, he was a new king, right? But who made them? Solomon, right? So they were inherited. Rehoboam inherited his shields. Now see, here's the truth of that. that's all well and good, because that's how it happens. It gets passed on, and you know, we light the fire, and we pass it on, and you see the joy, and you see the enthusiasm in someone else. But the question is your faith really yours? Or is it just inherited? Here's the second problem for Rehoboam. As these shields are hanging on the wall, from Rehoboam's perspective, I don't think he understood why his dad made the shield. And, I mean, hanging them in a palace, is that the normal place where you would put shields? No. They're not in use. Anything that is not in use is a prime target to get stolen. Anybody here ever had a bike stolen? Okay. Were you riding a bike at the time? No. Stuff gets stolen when you're not using it. All right? The shields got stolen when they weren't in use. And that's the exact same thing that can happen to our faith. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. It's easy for the world to come in and snatch it away. Let's see, third thing. Were gold shields practical? You think from Rehoboam's perspective, I mean, why do you think he might not have been using it? They were made out of gold, yeah. All right, so is gold a strong metal or a soft metal? It's very soft metal. But at the same time, it's incredibly heavy. It's the exact opposite thing you want to take into battle. Because it's heavy, and if somebody comes up with an iron sword, going to cut right through that gold. So, shields not really made to be used. But what are gold shields? I mean, come on, they're gold shields. That's so cool. They look good, but they're not practical. All right. Now let's make the application right there. Number one, you can't be inherited. If you're not using it, it's going to get stolen away from you. And if everything about your faith is just so that you look good, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. I'm telling you. Don't think for a minute that our Lord doesn't care what you believe. Our Lord cares so much. And even the most obnoxious kid in your high school that you think, man, the gospel could never reach that guy. Or she is so into the world, she will never consider the good news about Jesus Christ. I'm telling you, those are the very people that are the most desperate and who need it the most. And I'm telling you, they are just looking for somebody. Is it real? Is it really real in you? They're looking for real. All right, now, a lot of things that come around to take our faith. And here's what Rehoboam did. He replaced it with something cheaper, and you and I are going to be tempted to do the exact same thing. One day we wake up, wow, our faith is stolen. It's gone. We really don't have it anymore. So what do? We replace it with something stupid and cheaper. And just as long as it kind of looks good on the outside, a lot of people get to a place where they're okay with it. Don't ever be okay. talk for a minute. As you think about, don't let it happen to you. Your faith is going to be tested. You're going to be tempted to become something of less value, whether it's about feeling good, whether it's about being comfortable, whether it's about fitting in. I'm telling you, don't let it happen. One more verse, and then we'll come back to the good story. Colossians 2 and verse 8. Colossians 2 and verse 8. I want you to listen to the power, and I want you to listen to the passion that Paul has. Colossians 2, verse 8. Don't let anyone capture you, steal from you with empty philosophies and high-sounding nonsense that comes from human thinking and from the spiritual powers of this world rather than from Christ. You know what Paul said? Don't let anyone steal your faith. Bottom line, you are valuable. And your faith is valuable. Of more value than gold. You mean so much to Christ. Don't let anyone, don't let anything steal your faith. Don't fall for the lies. Don't fall for Satan's tricks. Don't settle for second-best bronze faith. Don't let the world steal. Don't let the world seduce. And don't hide your faith where it isn't being used every single day. All right. Now, here's the second story. I'll let you decide. Let's go back to Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 10. Why did Solomon make these 500 shields out of pure gold and hang them in his palace? We've already identified they're of no value in the palace. I mean, literally, in the context of a battle. Soldiers don't have them, and they're hanging on the wall in the palace, and not where the soldiers are. We've already identified that they're not practical from the standpoint of that gold is really, really heavy, and it's a really soft metal. So why does Solomon make them? I want to suggest there's only two options. Number one, either this was the height of arrogance. But believe me, I'm bringing in 25 tons of gold every year. Well, let's make all kinds of stupid stuff that we'll never use. Make it out of gold. Sure, why not? I'm King Midas. No, I'm King Solomon. Is that it? Or, for Solomon, was this an incredible statement of faith? I mean, think about it. Where did the gold come from? From Solomon's perspective. It came from God. And the Bible says that Solomon was called the Prince of Peace. He's a foreshadowing of Christ. His father David was the man of war. Remember, David couldn't build the temple because why? His hands too much blood. Right? So Solomon, he gets a kingdom of peace. And different from Rehoboam, he recognizes what his father had done in service to the Lord, and that God was now rewarding him and the people for the faithfulness of his father. So he takes from the gold, and he makes shields out of it, and he lines the palace every single day. Solomon, when he comes into the palace, when he comes into the throne room, when he comes into the hallways of the large chambers of the palace, every single place he looks, he sees these gold shields. Reminders, reminders, reminders. The battle belongs to the Lord. true and stays faithful. God had promised. These shields will never have to be used. Because God promised. That is the coolest, deepest expression of faith. We won't get it. I pray that one of you get it. So, two choices. Arrogance or faith. I think it's the same. So, that's the lesson. Now choose. Let's take a moment and let's pray. Our great God, you have given us something of greater value than gold. You have given us Jesus Christ. We thank you for the beauty of that gift. You tell us that we are born again, not of things that are perishable like gold, but we have been born again through Christ, through the living Word. And we thank you for the Word, for it teaches us and it shows us. I'm thankful for every single person here. May they know how incredibly valuable they are in your sight. And that you have marvelous things in store for each one who will go through this life as a journey of faith hand in hand with you. We thank you, Lord. In Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so, does your head hurt?